Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit and for the soul. And it's titled, I am a Universalist, Universalist, Universalist. I believe in a hope that helps. I received a message from a friend the other day asking if her son Luke could speak with me. We've met a couple of times before and he's an interesting young man, and this time he wanted to discuss some ideas for an essay that he was exploring. He's studying theology and philosophy, and the essay was on John Hick and his views on who Jesus was, and looking at ideas around God and the incarnation, as well as some 12-step spirituality principles, and around the search for those ideas around God or a higher power on 12-step spirituality, God of your own understanding, as they would say. And he wanted to discuss this with me. I read the message and I decided to give it, and contacted him, decided to give it a day to think about as I went back on some of my ministry training. Actually, it'd been a long time since I read any John Hick. Anyway, my friend called me on the last Saturday afternoon, and it was a wonderful conversation. It stimulated me immensely, and it got me thinking about my own beliefs and my own doubts about so many things, really, and how I apply these, more importantly, to my life. How my own faith, my own beliefs, if you like, impact on myself and those that I interact with. And it was also an opportunity to articulate my own understanding of my own free religious tradition. And many misconceptions about it too. Luke had them himself. He thought the Unitarians had only been around since the 1960s. He'd done a little bit of research on the internet, and I assume he must have discovered something about the formation of the Unitarian Universalists in the USA, who came together to form one denomination in the 1960s. I explained that Unitarian thoughts and ideas have been around certainly since the Reformation, and actually I would say since the days of Jesus, if not even before then actually. I talked about Joseph Priestley, who was basically the father figure really, or him and Lindsay, of Unitarianism in this country and maybe even America perhaps, in terms of Priestley. Luke himself had attended Priestley College in Warrington and studied philosophy and religion there, but knew absolutely nothing of Joseph Priestley as this radical minister of his day. I did explain, I wouldn't be too concerned about that, and it didn't surprise me actually, because I'm from the very same village that Joseph Priestley grew up in, Birstall in West Yorkshire. Went to Batley Grammar School, which he too attended, and we grew under there's a great big statue of him in Birstall Marketplace, and we used to meet there as teenagers, doing what teenagers do. And we knew him as the scientist, as we used to say in those days, the man who invented oxygen. Yes, I know he didn't invent oxygen, obviously. That's just what we said as a joke. But anyway, Luke wanted to talk about the ideas of John Hick and his views on who Jesus had believed he was himself. How this actually seemed very similar to classic Unitarian thinking anyway. It gave me an opportunity to explain my understanding of my own tradition, how it is today and historically, of course. And I explained that while originally Unitarians were non-Trinitarians, that we focused on Jesus as a man whose example ought to be followed rather than the unique incarnation of God on earth. While that was where we began, I explained that actually it's not really the key principle that binds us together as a community. The key, as I see it, and I think this has been the case throughout this wonderful free tradition, through the history of it, is where authority lies for those that call themselves Unitarians. That Unitarians are non-subscribers, that we make no statement of faith that folk who worship in our communities must follow and adhere to. And that authority for Unitarians lays in their honest reflection on their own conscience, that it is for each of us to seek our own truth, and that we do this in community with others, knowing that more can be gained by coming together. During the conversation, Luke noted that these kind of ideas of seeking our own truth were very similar to 12-step philosophy and the beliefs of John Hick. And I agreed with him entirely. He was correct to make that observation. Very similar. What is distinctive of the Unitarian tradition is the idea of authority being in the enlightened conscience. It's distinct from the Catholic tradition, where authority lies within the church structure, the authority of the church itself, or general Protestantism, where authority tends to lie within the book, within the Bible. For Unitarians, authority lies in the enlightened conscience. Now, of course, this does require a belief in humanity, that the enlightened conscience can be trusted for each of us, which sometimes can be questioned, of course. And I quoted the wonderful 19th century Unitarian theologian James Martineau during our conversation. By the way, I misquoted him slightly, but this is the actual quote. The incarnation is true not of Christ exclusively, but of man universally and God everlastingly. He bends into the human to dwell there, and humanity is a susceptible organ of the divine. I had a great conversation with Luke. He told me when he next comes home that he'd like to come and check out some of our services. I told him he would be most welcome. He thought that I was helping him, when in truth, he was helping me a great deal. So thank you, my friend. Thanks, Luke. I had another conversation that weekend too with another friend. They're also exploring spirituality, but have this fear of coming in community, of religious community, I guess. They say they would prefer to explore alone, as they're concerned about getting sucked into something that they don't trust. They have some misgivings about organised religion. They have many misgivings about it, actually. And they came out with that classic line about religion and spirituality and the differences. They said, religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell, whereas spirituality is for people who have already been there. We talked for some time, and I spoke of my own Unitarian tradition and tried to explain that this view of religion is not entirely accurate. Not all religions think that way. I spoke a little of the need for community too, and how coming together enhances one's own personal spirituality, and that you can do that without dogma. And I spoke specifically about the Universalists in America. I think it was the 5th largest denomination in the 19th century, and how they were famously known, or infamously known really, as the no-hellers. For them there was no hell. So their religion was not about being afraid of going to hell, clearly. Both conversations I had got me thinking about the free religious tradition that I belong to, that I'm a part of, and also my feelings about faith and my own identity, how I identify my own beliefs, I guess. I had recently returned from the annual meetings of my denomination, which I enjoyed thoroughly. I've not been since before COVID, actually. I'm becoming more and more involved in helping to develop ministers for the future. I will have a student with me from September, Janine Sim. Both congregations are looking forward to that. I'm also being invited to participate in Ministry in the Making, which is a thing that helps support ministers who are coming into training, during their training, and in their first few years of professional ministry. So this is all allowing me to reflect on why I am a Unitarian and why I became a Unitarian minister. People ask all the time. I'm not going to go into details about that here. I've done so before. I celebrate the beautiful diversity of our free tradition. For I know that those who I congregate with do not all believe and disbelieve in exactly the same way. So I celebrate that diversity. Within our free religious tradition, each congregation is linked through a wider denomination named the General Assembly of Unitarian and Free Christian Churches. But it's not a ruling body. No one has authority over anyone else. Each congregation is self-governing, and each member of the congregation is free to believe as their conscience dictates. We are closely connected to other similar denominations throughout the world. In America, the denomination is called Unitarian Universalists, which was essentially two denominations that came together as one in the early 1960s because they were basically the same. But they each have their own unique history, as every congregation does, as every individual does, really. And I have over the years read much by Unitarians and Universalists, and what I found is that I actually seem to connect, spiritually at least, more with those that call themselves Universalists than straight Unitarians, certainly of the American kind anyway. In fact, I identify so much so that a few years ago I declared myself as a Universalist. And a Unitarian friend asked me, well, what kind of Universalist are you? I paused and I thought for a moment, and then I answered, well, I am a Universalist. And I remember at the time that they looked at me as if I was somewhat insane, a little mad. It's not the first time that's happened to me in my life. So I explained that I was a Universalist in the old sense of the word, the original meaning. Universal salvation, I do not believe in hell and damnation. That the God of my limited understanding would never condemn anyone to an eternity in hell. I do not believe that some are saved and others are unsaved. I believe that God has an intimate love for all, that if there is a hell, it's a sense of being that can be experienced within this life. I talked about the prodigal son parable, and I also spoke of my belief that this love is always there, it's always here waiting, that this lure of divine love is what God's about as I understand it. And I also said that I was a Universalist in the more modern understanding as well, that I see truth in so many other traditions, that none can reveal the whole truth, that each tradition is a window that lets some of the light through, that reveals some of the truth, but not all the truth. And I also talked of my belief in the interconnectedness of all life, and that all that happens and does not happen, that everything matters, that divinity is present within everything, a kind of universal love, I suppose. So I am a Universalist in three senses, at least it seems, maybe more, probably on into infinity, on and on and on. That life is diverse and that life is ever evolving, actually. I remembered that beautiful banner I once carried at Manchester Pride. Unitarians celebrate the diversity of all creation. This is the beauty of life, you see, the diversity of it all, that nothing is the same, that nothing is entirely repeated exactly the same, that life is evolving. So I'm a Universalist, on into infinity probably. Yeah, but today I'll keep it a little simple. I declare that I am a Universalist. I believe in a hope that helps. So I hope that helps too. I remember a few years ago hearing a joke about the difference between the 19th century Unitarians and the Universalists of the same period. And it said that the Unitarians believed that humanity was too good to be rejected by God, whereas the Universalists believed that God was too good to ever reject humanity. Yes, I am a Universalist. I am a Universalist. Absolutely I am. I believe in and experience a God of love who accepts all and rejects none, is present in all life and yet is greater than the entirety of all life. I also believe that there are many ways to understand and experience this universal love. It makes no sense to me to think that there can be only one way. Universalism has given me a code of hopefulness that I can live by. It sustains me through the vicissitudes of life, and it connects me to the whole of reality in its beautiful, beautiful diversity. I celebrate the diversity of all creation. I celebrate it. Universalism speaks to my head, my heart, and above all it speaks to my soul. It has enabled me to observe and fully participate in life, to bear witness to what we do to each other and to ourselves, however unbearably painful that is. It helps me come to terms with my past and my present and to look forward in hope at the future. It helps me connect to the people I have and currently share my life with. It enables me to live fully alive. Universalism is a hope-filled faith, but that does not mean it's an easy path. It's not about sitting back and waiting to be rescued by the God of love that it promotes. Instead, it declares that salvation in this life can only be achieved by facing up to the suffering present in all of our lives and dealing directly with the despair that accompanies it. It's also about bringing hope to those in despair. It's about singing the joy of living in all of life's mystery. As one of the founding fathers of Universalism, John Murray, so beautifully put it in the late 18th century, "You may possess only a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Do not push them deeper into their theological despair, but preach the kindness and everlasting love of God." Whenever I feel despair, both within myself or with the rest of humanity, which I do from time to time, I try to remember these words by the Universalist preacher John Murray. I feel a deep connection and purpose in life and through life, and in so doing I experience the truth that everything matters, every thought, every feeling, every word and every deed, for love is both eternal and universal. It welcomes all, it accepts all. That goodness and everlasting love of God. As we live our lives in this our shared world, it's important to remember to widen our views and deepen our experiences, increasing our awareness that all life touches way beyond our horizons, not just directly those that we come into contact with, but so many others also, often indirectly, as you've no idea how many lives you touch. In so doing, we can welcome the wanderer to find their way back home, and we'll begin to repair the fragmentations of life and develop deeper intimacy with life and with one another. In so doing, we may find our place among the family of things. We'll find ourselves safe and in love, and at home wherever we find our feet. We will welcome all. I am glad I found a home amongst the Unitarians all those years ago. I am grateful that it led me to this work in ministry, which I do imperfectly. I've been reminded of that only the last few days. I've had the opportunity to reflect much, particularly the last couple of years, but even the last few days. I have learnt so much serving the two communities and to some degree the wider denomination and the wider community. I look forward to many more years of this wonderful privilege. Yes, I am a Unitarian minister. I am because I believe in the capacity of the human conscience to seek what is true. I believe in the teachings of Jesus and as an example to us all of what we can all be when we live by love. But I also believe there is deep truth in so many other traditions too. Yes, I'm also a Universalist, for I believe in the eternal and universal love of God, that there is that of God in each of us. I also believe that there is so much truth yet to be revealed. This cannot be discovered in isolation. We need to come together in love to congregate, for all life is interconnected, and I celebrate the diversity, the beautiful diversity of all life, of all creation. So yes, I am proud to be a Unitarian minister. I am. but I'm equally at ease describing myself as a universalist, universalist, universalist. I wonder how you describe yourself. Be careful how you describe me, perhaps. Maybe that's something to think about. Think about over the next few days after you've shared this devotion. Please share it. How would you articulate your faith if you were to find yourself in a similar conversation like I was last week? How would you describe who you are, where you're coming from, what you're open to, and how that affects and impacts your life? Have a think about it. Amen. I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more, and we can all bless. We bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. So let's let our little light shine, no matter how dim, how small. May we use our light in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and the minds of all people. Let's give them not hell, but hope and courage. Let's lead them to hope and not despair. Let's show them the kindness and everlasting love of God. And may we carry this spirit with us, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Amen.